Hi, I'm Margaret, one of the contributors here at Focused Friends. I have a great memory of my 5th grade teacher. It was 1976 and it was my first year living on a reserve in Victoria. I had grown up in the city and my mother had just remarried and took us to live in a new place, which was very foreign to me. I had started this new school and my teacher's name was Maureen Stevenson. Mrs. Stevenson was a middle-aged woman, very buxomy, wore lovely little dresses. You never saw her in pants, cute little heels, and was so vivacious and so full of energy. And she used to tell the most wonderful stories. And she really had a way of telling a story. I really enjoyed that about her. One of the things that she was really into was reading. She also loved music, especially live theater, and she encouraged me to read at a higher grade level than I was currently reading, and introduced me to so many wonderful books. She was really, really encouraging in terms of reading. But the thing that I love the most about her, and the best memory I have of her, is her love of music. And she was, every week she would give us a little music time where she would bring in records that she had from home and play us these different musical operas, which I just adored. I had never heard music like this before in my life, and I was just enraptured by her choices. So one of them that I remember very fondly was Porgy and Bess, and it was Billie Holiday as Bess, and just that voice, that raspy voice, and it stuck with me forever, and I became a Billie Holiday fan as an adult. And you know that I love you, Porgy, that one song, I love you, Porgy, don't let them take me, yeah, that it really stuck in my head, and that was thanks to Mrs. Stevenson. The other video, or not video because there were no videos then, the other album that she brought in and would play a couple of songs every week, now would be very controversial, but in 1976 and 77, you know, nobody cared, was Jesus Christ Superstar, the original version. Wow, that one again stuck with me. And she would tell us, she would stop part way and she would say, okay, now this is the part where Jesus is taken by Pontius Pilate, and he's receives 39 lashes. So listen to this. And she, you know, she paused the record partway through, or, you know, just lift the needle a little bit. Okay, now this is the part. And you just didn't want to stop listening. And when music time was over and you had to go on to something like math and whatnot, you could hear all of the kids humming to the music because it was stuck in their head. Then later on in life, I met my husband, and he was a huge fan of Jesus Christ Superstar. So we've gone actually to see the musical a few times as adults, and we have the records, and he has the original. So I met a good guy who liked live opera and musical theater, and we enjoyed that together. And thanks to Mrs. Stevenson for introducing me to that at a very young age, an impressionable age, and in a time when I really needed some nurturing to become a better person. Okay, now look, little tears because she was pretty special.
School for me was a mixture of experiences. Like everyone, I had good times and some not so good. Generally, I enjoyed school, but having listened to my other team members of Focused Friends, I recognise I don't have one outstanding memory of a particular teacher impacted on me as much as they've mentioned. I recall teachers who were kind, but I wonder if they stand out more because there were just so many teachers that were either stressed or simply in the wrong job. I recall that many would shout at the class and lose their composure, and that frightened me as a little girl. Senior school was again pretty much the same. Some teachers were quieter and easier to be around, but also less interested in the student. Unfortunately, too many seem to have a belief that control by bullying one or two individuals in a class was the way forward to gaining group discipline. Don't get me wrong, I did enjoy school, but on the whole, I'd say my time there, in the sense of support and mentoring, came from friendships with peers than positive influences from my teachers. That came much later. In my early 40s, I felt that I needed to push myself to do something new, and so I decided to return to education. It was scary though. Having not studied in a formal capacity for over 2 decades, I wasn't sure if I still could. I did find it hard at first, but my teacher was excellent at her job. My confidence began to grow, and she even taught me how to deal with some exam nerves. I was only allowed to attend the first year of a 2-year course. The second year wasn't offered to mature students, only in a sixth form capacity. Following excellent results in my first year exams, my teacher then encouraged me to raise this with the college and to inquire if they would make allowances for me to attend the second year. I can't believe I did it now, but I did. I took it further, and with the support of the teacher, together with the excellent results that I'd got in my first year exams, the college actually allowed me to join the sixth form group to complete the second year of the course. This teacher had instilled such a sense of belief in me that I felt able to fight for myself, to believe I had the right to question the college rules just for me. Mind you, it was a new challenge, sitting with all the 17 and 18-year-olds and not feeling out of place. But that also tested my confidence, and it actually ended up the best experience ever. Total acceptance from the class was fantastic, and we had a really fun year learning together. I went on to pass my exams, and I even achieved 100% in 3 out of the 4 papers. The college then paid to retrieve them and use them as examples for future groups, and I was informed later that I'd been awarded Mature Student of the Year from the College of Further Education. And that, I can't begin to explain to you like how that made me feel. I'm just so proud of myself and so happy. Even now I can't say it without a smile on my face. I'd never had anyone believe in my academic ability so much, ever. That had and remains a huge impact upon me. She taught me to recognise my own academic ability, to value my own needs enough to challenge existing protocols within established places. That teacher gave me self-belief, self-confidence. Getting my results, seeing that I literally couldn't have gained a higher mark on some of those papers, is in that second year gave me a glimpse of what she'd seen, my own potential. But it was more than that. Even if I hadn't passed those exams, I learned how it felt to have a person of influence, my teacher, see me, really see something in me that I wasn't aware of, and to guide and support and teach me to believe in myself through her example of doing so. After that 2-year course, I decided my priority was more present in my children's lives, because it had been hard studying as well as working, and I felt I was missing too much precious time with them. I'd achieved what I needed, and my confidence was back. Now years have passed again, and I'm at another junction in life where I'm considering whether to return to education again. Naturally, after a break, the thought is scary, and I am doubting myself a little bit. But what I realise is that that's just a little bit of nerves, because deep down, that self-belief in my academic skills that teacher gave me does still remain. I remember all that she said to me, her support and her belief that she had in me, and I realise I can do it if I choose to. Wow, what a gift that teacher gave me.
In the 80s at secondary school was a very different place to what it is like now. When I was at secondary school, the boys would have the slipper if they were naughty, and the girls would have a ruler on the back of the hand, and they would be put on top of a stage for every child to see in assembly. So it wasn't a pleasant place to be in the 80s, I don't think, at secondary school, because for me the teachers were cruel, where I was anyway, and I must admit I was a very model student. I never got into trouble, I never had the ruler on the back of my hand, but it was a difficult time. And you know, also 1988 was the year of the GCSEs. We were the first guinea pig children to take the GCSEs, and our teachers were never there. We wasn't taught properly, and hence I did absolutely dreadful in my exams. I wasn't pushed enough, and I do regret that. But like I said, now school is a totally different place, thank goodness. Discipline might be a little bit lacking nowadays, but not to the point that you are bullied by teachers in front of the whole school. Was wrong. But of course we didn't know any different then. And I think my happiest memories would be from primary school. There was one teacher from secondary school, Mr. Hugh. He was amazing, and he used to call me the Jolly Green Giant because I was the tallest girl of the year. But mainly I would say my first memory is when I first started primary school, and I was very sporty, and I loved all my sport all through primary and secondary school, and I was very good at it, and I won the cup every year. And the teacher that stood out was Mr. Ginniver, and he walked with a limp because he had a wooden leg. Now to this day I don't know why he had a wooden leg. But he was a lovely, lovely head teacher. And he said, "Tracy, if you win this trophy for 3 years in a row, you can keep the trophy." And I'll always remember that, because, I've got to win it. I've got to win it 3 years in a row. And I did win it 3 years in a row. But unfortunately, Mr. Ginniver left on the third year, and a new head teacher came. And he decided that wasn't going to happen. So I wasn't so keen on Mr. Watterson. No, he was actually a fabulous teacher as well. But Mr. Ginniver was a very kind hearted, very tall. I remember him being very tall, but that could be because I was only 4 or 5. And it's funny how you see things then, so I don't know. Anyway, that was my childhood memory, really, is Mr. Ginniver. I wish I knew more about him, but when you're that age, you don't ask because you don't really care. And I think that's everything.
I've been very influenced in my life by certain people who've inspired me, and one of them was a particular school teacher, and it made me wonder about who other people have been inspired by at school. We all often hear people speak about having a particular teacher whose influence and inspiration has stayed with them through to adult life. For me, that was a woman by the name of Mrs. Eileen McNeill, who came from Halifax in England. School was in the London borough of Ealing, where I grew up, and she was the first teacher that we had in middle school. My goodness, what a love affair began with the most extraordinary woman who so many of us from my class have been so inspired by. She was probably late 40s back then, and she was an English teacher, by profession, but she would teach us the whole curriculum, maybe bar French and a couple of sciences. And it felt like being at home, being in her company. She was just a warm and genuinely amazing, lovely, kind human being. She taught us about kindness, she taught us about consideration, she taught us about respect, because she treated us that way as well. She was somebody who led by example. But what was fascinating was at the end of any school day where kids just want to rush home, we didn't. We knew that the sort of last half an hour would be coming, and it would be a magical time, because that would be when Mrs. McNeil would come out from behind a desk and sit with us, gather us round, and she would tell us stories. And in particular, she brought into my life and the lives of my friends and classmates The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. She skipped The Magician's Nephew, which was the book before that. But what was fascinating was that she recounted this story with such eloquence. She dramatised the parts, she played the characters as she said their lines. She was so visual in her descriptive language. And I'm emphasising this because she didn't have a copy of the book. She did it all from up here, and we were utterly captivated. She just knew this story so well. And we went to Narnia with her and with Peter, Susan, Edmund and Lucy from the story. She had a copy of Prince Caspian, the next book. I remember the cover of it, kind of a dark forest scene with a chap on a horse, and it was a bit ratty. She'd used it many times. But then the rest of the series of books, she again just recounted from memory. And my love of the English language, my love of writing, my inspiration to think about poetry and all of that has come from, most of that, I should say, has come from Mrs. McNeil, this amazing and extraordinary woman. It was usually the course of events that the tutor would have us for 1 year only out of the 4 years that we'd be at that school. So she had us for the first year of our time there. But as we were entering our 4th year, she had put up such a fight to have us as a class for that final year so that she could see us off. We had such a bond with her, and she succeeded in getting the rule changed for her so that we could share that final year with her. And here's why. During the course of our first year with her, she had to take a couple of months off just before the Christmas, I think it was. And she came back and she looked like she'd been through the mill. We'd missed her so much. But it wasn't until slightly after her return that we found out that a son had been killed on a motorbike accident. And she handled herself with such dignity. She was just incredible, utterly incredible. There was such a bond with us. She deeply connected with us, and it was just a magical experience. Come the 4th year, we got her back and we were absolutely delighted. I mean, everybody was delighted. We wept, actually. There were tears of joy just at knowing that we would get Mrs. McNeil again. In that final year, this clashed with a terrible time in my family when a young uncle of my mum's youngest brother, Graham, was diagnosed with leukemia at 29 years of age. And over that first year of him having that illness, my family were going through utter hell. And Mrs. McNeil was so kind, so caring, so considerate, so supportive, so loving. I felt safe, I felt comforted, and at the weekend we'd go and see my Uncle Graham, my mum and I, my dad sometimes, and it would be harrowing. He'd sometimes be in an isolation unit. This young man, looking out from his ward in isolation, and we're all trying to cheer him up. And I go back to school on the Monday, and over the weekend the scenes of despair and upset in my family were huge, watching everybody, grandparents, aunts and uncles, cousins, just broken by what was happening to our uncle. So Mrs. McNeil would look after me. She'd always just make sure I was okay. During the course of this time, there was a particular incident where I was in a school play and my mum and dad arrived this evening to watch this play. I was going to be a narrator. I was playing Charles Dickens, narrating the Christmas Carol. And I could see that my mum, who was really struggling with what was happening to her younger brother, she'd been put on sleeping pills, which are now banned, the tranquilizer type, which are particularly lethal. And when she came off of those, there was nothing. So she turned to alcohol. So she and my dad turned up at the school, and my mum had drunk a lot. And Mrs. McNeil clocked this before anybody could really tell. She was straight in, put her arms around my mum. She sent my dad home, told me to get on if I could with the first half of the play, and that she'd organised for somebody to take over from me the second half. And she sat with my mum in the corridor and hugged her and cried with her and laughed with her and supported her, because she knew the pain of loss, and we knew my uncle was in a bad way. And sadly he did go on about 18 months later to die at the age of 31. But Mrs. McNeil looked after us. She got my mum and I home safely. She used to check in on my mum. She used to call my mum. She used to write to my mum. And it was incredible. What an amazing teacher. So I developed a massive sense of understanding around empathy and kindness from Mrs. McNeil. I understood much about just communication and caring and consideration, but also my passion for languages, my passion for the English language, my passion for writing, for poetry, for C.S. Lewis and the Chronicles of Narnia. And she stays with me. She's up here. I think she's probably long gone by now, but she's always in here and up here. And everything I do, I try to do to a good standard. And she taught me that as well. If you're not going to give something your best shot, then don't give it a go at all. And always push your boundaries, always push your limits. Don't just do what's safe, but go beyond. And that's where you learn and grow. And she taught me that.